concerns being raised about rising home insurance premiums and the difficulty some homeowners are facing in getting cover, particularly in areas flagged for potential flood risk. The issue is being highlighted by the Shannon Banks Sinn Féin Councillor James Ryan, and he joins me now to discuss it along with a resident of Shannon Banks, Dominic Kiely. And you're both very welcome to the programme. And I know, James, you had a motion calling on the government to ensure home insurance prices do not rise above the rate of inflation. What has prompted you to raise this particular issue?
Well, good morning. To be completely honest with you, it was Dominic in the first place pointed it out to me that his own home insurance was rising, on a yearly basis. And then coincidentally, within a few days, I got my own home insurance bill for the year. And of course, it had gone up well beyond the rate of inflation as well. So that's why I put in the motion there last week, on Monday, to Clare County Council about asking the Minister to actually check on these things, because I understand insurance goes up with the rate of inflation, but you're talking about 20% in places. That's not the rate of inflation. No,
that's it.
That's the problem,
Yeah, definitely. That is a considerable jump. And I suppose you kind of lit the fire on this, Dominic. So, and thank you for joining us as well.
I did. Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, can you live in Shannon Banks? Know the area well, just up the road?
I live in Shannon Banks, yes. Which is County Clare.
Yeah, and just over the border. And when did you first notice your home insurance starting to rise significantly?
It's increasing for the last number of years. If I look back at my premium history for 2021, I paid €275.75. This year it's €600.44. And that's with a 40% discount and a loyalty discount. The total premium would have been $945.
That's with a discount and loyalty, loyalty in inverted commas.
Yeah. Now, as James was saying there about the rate of inflation, if you just talk about the OAP, which I am at the moment, and it will be for a long time, I hope. Back in 2021, the old age pension was €248.30. It's now the base rate without any add-ons is €299.30. So that was an increase of €51, which is about 20% over the 5 years. If we look at the house insurance, it's 105% of an increase over the 5 years. So that is not keeping in line with inflation. And this is what I was speaking about with James. And as James said, he got his shortly after I got mine, and he was astounded by his as well,
Yeah, those are, big jumps. Like, Dominic, you're in your early 70s now. How difficult has it become to keep up with these payments, and what kind of choices do rising, not just home insurance, but insurance costs in general, force people and your peers of your age to make?
Yeah, I try to be on top of this all the time, and I pay it in full, which gives me a little discount as well. Because if you go over the 12 monthly rate and pay it on a monthly rate, you're charged interest on top of that as well. And bear in mind, the government also gets a levy of 4% on your premium. So I try to pay mine and keep it down. But what I would do, and I would advise to anybody, is to put it away weekly. And if you can't save it in your own home, put it into the credit union office. And it's always there for you.
Yeah.
And cash at the moment, cash is king. And if you pay in full, you will get a discount,
I don't know. It sounds like you have your head screwed on, Dominic, and you forward plan. So I'm sure it sounds like you haven't ever had to consider dropping your home insurance altogether because of the cost. But do you know of people who, if they haven't done that, it has been a serious consideration?
Unfortunately, I do. I do know of a person a couple of years ago who was in a similar situation, and they dropped their insurance. And unfortunately, they had a house fire, which destroyed their house totally. Only for family, friends, neighbours, collections, tradesmen coming in, they wouldn't have a house now. But yeah, it's very important to have, if not your contents, at least have your building covered.
Yeah.
But at that rate of increase, 105% over 5 years. I know the living wage hasn't gone up by that much. Neither has the pensions. but that seems to be a fierce amount of money.
Yeah, it really does. And just to bring you back in, James, I mean, it's eye-watering the amount. And you're also highlighting the difficulty getting home insurance because of perceived flood risks. And particularly Shannon Banks, the name is self-explanatory, right by the Shannon. Yeah. How much of a hindrance is that? Because, you're highlighting that some parts of Shannon have never actually experienced flooding. So why do you believe insurers are still applying these restrictions?
Well, that's the most amazing thing is, right, Shannon Airport was built, flood defences were put in almost 60 years ago. It hasn't suffered any flooding, yet people in Shannon are having problems getting insurance all the time, which means if you can't get insurance, you can't get a mortgage. Now, I myself in Westbury, which has my side of Westbury, and Westbury is a very large place, has never had a history of flooding. I actually lost home insurance for flooding for quite a number of years. They just took it away and they said they're not going to do it. Yes, and then when I went and asked, they said I have a river behind me. I have a tiny stream, which is about 6 inches high if I dipped my foot in it, Yes, it reads as a river, and I think a lot of the time that's the problem because there's nobody on the ground actually saying, oh yeah, well that thing couldn't possibly flood ever, that's part of the problem. The other part is that it's just, I think people take advantage sometimes too. I think the companies take advantage going, well, people will pay more because they, they desperately need insurance because as Dom said there, you have to have insurance because without it, you can see the way things go so badly wrong. And I think that's where it's very difficult, to continue to, live every day if you don't have insurance, because you're always going to have that worry,
And Dominic, you're living in Shannon Banks, right by the river. Has your home or homes there been susceptible to flooding from your own experience living there? Have you ever seen flooding in the area?
I'm living here since 1976. And I've seen the river rise. Now I've seen flooding down further the bank, but I mean those houses I think myself should never have been built on that part of the river. It's where the tide from the estuary will just come up and stop there. Shannon Banks is a tidal part of the River Shannon. Now myself, I was refused flooding or flood risk. And I asked the agent, would they go along and look at a topographical view of Shannon Banks, and especially where I live? And they came back and said, yeah, you will never be flooded. And I have flood insurance now.
Others maybe...
They actually looked at the map and said, right, how high is Dom Kiely's house in Shannon Banks above the river? And they found out, if I get flooded here in Shannon Banks in my house, God help Limerick City down the road, So I got my insurance by asking that question.
Okay, James, you want to come back in there?
Yeah, but look, just kind of reiterating there what Dom was saying, because I mean he's way above the river line, as Dom said as well. If his house actually gets flooded by the river, Limerick City would actually be finished off, because it just would be impossible. But it is an unfortunate fact that in lots of parts of Westbury, where I am, in Shannon Banks, and of course in Shannon Town, people are not getting flood insurance, yet there's no real explanation. And I think, as Don said there, a topographical, proper investigation by insurance companies should be done. Instead of just relying on a map, it looks like a river when in fact it's not a river, it's barely a trickle in places. It still stops people, and that is a big issue for people, especially if you're a young person, or a young couple, trying to get a mortgage, and the first thing when you want to get some home insurance, they say, well, you're in a flood risk area because there's a river, when in fact it's not a river, it's often just basically a stream that couldn't possibly ever flood.
And your own situation, James, that you're highlighting with what just sounds like a borderline trickle near your house, does it feel like sometimes insurance companies, they can be extremely forensic in trying to find ways to charge you more, but then in other ways they're very much less forensic, again, in ways to either not give you insurance or charge you more?
Yeah, I do. And, that's the big issue a lot of the time. Like, for instance, I remember when my insurance was stopped and I went in and I said, well, why? And they said, well, you've got a river next to you. And I said, it's 6 feet below me. And I said, it's about 6 inches deep, Like, I can walk across it and barely get my shoes wet, but yet it was registering as a river according to them on their system, And that is the worst part about it, because there's no real checking there. I even said to them, will I bring in photographs? No, we don't need them. Whereas I could have proven very quickly it's something that couldn't possibly flood. Yet I was out without flood insurance for a good 5, I think almost 6 years.
Meanwhile, James and Shannon, flood defence is being planned or being developed in the area. Should that change how insurers assess risk in those communities?
I think it has to be demanded. I mean, at first, there's no flooding in Shannon at present. Flood defences were put in 60 years ago. They're still clearly working, but they are going to add to them. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? But once they're done, I think anybody who wants to buy a house should not be subjected to any kind of questioning about flood issues, because flood defences are built for, once in a 100-year event. That's what they actually told us at a meeting very recently, which means that you couldn't possibly have an issue then. If brand new flood defences are put in on top of old flood defences, where could there be an issue? There really shouldn't, once all these things are finished.
Your motion is calling on the Minister to intervene. What kind of action would you like to see from government?
Well, you see, it's kind of, first of all, what I asked was that, why is insurance, home insurance, as Dom pointed out just now, why is it way above the rate of inflation? Dom's, in 4 to 5 years, Dom's insurance has dramatically increased. Why would that be the case? And that's the big question. They say if things just go by the rate of inflation, which is 2 to 3%, I can accept that, because things do get more expensive over time. But 20% jumps, for an awful lot of people, because I did do a lot of deep diving into this, and 20% in an awful lot of places, is too much in 1 year. I mean, and it can't be justified. And this is people who do not make any claims. Why would it jump by 20% if you make no claim?
Yeah, it is it's a head scratcher to say the least, Dom. And just to finish with you, I mean, do you want to see stronger regulation of the insurance industry to protect consumers? What message would you send to decision makers?
I mean, if you go back to the business I was in, which is the business of weighing scales, and there's standards there. You've got your OIML standards and the weights and measures standards. Every scale, every meter, your petrol pump, your gas meters, everything has to be checked and standardized. And if the system is wrong, then the companies are brought down to bear. Now, there seems to be nobody regulating the insurance business. As James was saying there, I think myself, the people selling insurance, they go on the computer, say, right, where do you live? Right, Shannon Banks, red flag, river. I live in Clonmel, red flag, river. It doesn't matter where you live. If a river comes into the sequence, they automatically tell you, we don't want your business, And then you're talking to a man who's ticking a box in the computer, or you're talking to a girl who's ticking a box in the computer, and it's the computer that's making up his mind. It's all the matrix that the insurance companies put in to their computers.
Yeah,
and
so it needs to be more.
And the people you're talking to, they don't have any choice other than to do what the computer says. Right, this is what it's going to cost you. The matrix says this, and bang, you pay that. No. If there was more personalised, not only in the insurance business, but every business, because when you phone a business now, it's an automated call, you're talking to a computer. And the personal touch it's gone, and these computers, they've taken over.
Yeah, I do have to leave it there, but I think that a lot of people would agree with you on that. Matters like these are too, certainly using automated or computer systems, it can be too black and white, and a bit of a personal human touch. But a bit more understanding in that regard would certainly be beneficial. My thanks to Dominic Kiely and to Councillor James Ryan for joining me in this